All right, everybody. So the first thing that we're going to do to prepare for our Santos-inspired student success art project is to add a watercolor background to your watercolor paper. So you're going to have a large brush. You're going to be sharing water with the person sitting next to you and around you. And remember, when you ever dip in to either wet your brush or clean it, you always want to dip and drag. Dip and drag. Please don't tap, because then it's going to get all over the table, your paper, and your neighbor's paper. Today we'll be using primarily the cool colors, your green, blue, and purple. If you want to use a little bit of the others that are in your tray, that's okay. Now remember, when we do the background, if you remember from Santos's work, it's pretty abstract. So don't worry about it being any particular shape, but you can think about where you want to see splashes of color. When you think you're done with one color, then you can switch to the other. And remember, the drier your brush, the darker the color will be. So if I wanted to make a darker purple in there, you can see I add that. And you can also see how it kind of like bleeds and spreads, which is pretty cool. But if you want a color to be light, then you're going to add more water to it. I can kind of spread that out a little bit too, and it becomes interesting. So if I want to change to a different color, like I said, I can get in here and switch to maybe a little bit of blue. And you want to spread it out so that most of your paper has color on it. If you could be just a little careful near the edges, if you want to leave a little white border, you can do that. Right, so I'm just going to do this in here, right? And as you're doing this, you can be thinking about what word or thing do you think is really important for the success of a student, all right? We looked at his Alphabetismo series and how he says that literacy is very important, education is very important. What do you think is important for a child to be successful? What do you need? Do you need food? Do you need education? Do you need rest? Do you need a chance to play? What do you need? You need love, care, all right? So just be thinking about that stuff as you're working, all right? So I'm going to leave a little bit of white space on mine, all right? We saw in Santos's work he had a little bit of white space as well. I'm going to go back and just add maybe a little bit more color. What you don't want to do is keep scrubbing a particular area. You don't want your paper to get so saturated, full of water, that it's going to be hard to work with later. Right? So I'm going to move this aside. And the next thing that you're going to do is, on a small piece of paper that I'll give you, once you return your brush and your watercolor set to the proper place, is you'll put your name and room number at the top, either vertical or horizontal. That's okay. And then what you want to do is think of 3 possibilities. What could you do? I think love's really important. All right. Rest. And I think it like a chance to play or explore. Right? If you're not quite sure of the spelling, go ahead and check with a neighbor, a couple neighbors, and then if you're still not sure, check with me. I can put some words on the board for you. The next thing you want to do is draw a couple rectangles that are similar in proportion, all right, to your watercolor paper, okay? Don't make it too skinny, don't make a square. And then what you want to think about is, we saw how Santos abstracted and camouflaged his letters in that Alphabetismo series. So if I'm using rest, you know, I can use uppercase, I can use a lowercase, and I just want to think about interesting arrangement, kind of flipping letters, maybe turning things sideways, but you can see how I'm using the whole paper, right? And I get like maybe like a T in there. So we kind of read it, R-E-S-T. And then you want to go ahead and do something like that for a second one, or you could do it for the same word. It's a little bit a different arrangement. Your letters can go from top to bottom if you like. You can overlap, so you can see how I've got the E, X, P, L, O. You can have some letters that are really big, some that are really small. R, E. All right, so you can see how I did that. Now, once you have that done, then what you can think about is how you're going to camouflage them, right? And what I mean by that is we can make some of them maybe thicker and bolder than others, all right? When you looked at Santos's lines, you could see that they were very bold and strong against that background. And then the other thing is, when we looked at it, we could see how he was using other lines to make it more interesting as well. You know, so if I wanted to put like a pattern in there, or if I wanted to use broken lines kind of in there to hide part of it. All right, so you get the idea. So you can see how I can add details to some of those letters that are going to make it more interesting. So you want to look for kind of empty spots. If I have something in there, you know, I could do something like that to kind of break it up. So here you saw me do it. Here are a few others that you can see where I did the word play, failure. Sometimes it's important to fail, all right, and learn from it. So those are a couple examples, all right? Here you can see I used love, I used explore again. I like that one, right? Once you do that, as you're preparing, this paper is drying. Now for this purpose, it's a little too wet for me to do. So what I will do is demonstrate on a blank piece, but keep in mind that yours will be full of your watercolor background. So you're gonna choose one of those words, right? Let's say I'm gonna go with, I liked rest. So I'm gonna work with this one. So I would turn my paper vertical to match the vertical. Then what I can do is I'm gonna go ahead first and lightly kind of outline it with the crayon. And if it changes a little bit, that's okay. The important thing is that your letters should get a whole lot bigger than they are here on this paper because it is much bigger. So you can see I've got the word in there. Then what I'm gonna do is go in and make my lines bolder and thicker like we saw in Santos's. All right, that's gonna help them stand out against that watercolor background. So you're gonna have to apply a little bit more force with the crayon. Another thing, another rule of thumb is that try and make some of your lines about as wide as your thumb. All right, that way they're gonna be really bold. All right, and you're gonna apply a little bit of force. Now, if your paper is a little too wet in areas, you can still draw softly in those spots, but don't scrub too hard because you don't want your paper to tear on you as well because it's gonna be weaker as it's wet. So once I have that, then I can go in and add some of those extra details that I had practiced earlier. Right? And again, applying force. These lines do not have to be as bold or as thick as your other ones. That's okay. And you may find that since it is bigger, you've got room to add other lines in there as well. So you can see how I did that. So that's about it. And then the final step is to, after your project is complete, is somewhere on this paper, whether it's on the front or the back, is to give me a reason. I want you to reflect on the word that you chose, right? For example, I chose rest. So I'm going to write a sentence that supports that. I chose rest because it is important to give our bodies a break. Our bodies really, and your minds too, and our minds a break. Okay, so think about that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started.